All right, recording has started, and this is the March 9th, 2023 Crossplane community meeting. I will go ahead and drop a link to the agenda doc in the Zoom chat now for anybody who's still joining right now. I might not have seen a link there yet. So there's the link in the Zoom chat to the agenda doc, and feel free to come in there and add any topics or suggestions for things that you all want to talk about as well. The agenda doc is open for suggestions. All right, so I think the first thing to talk about is recent releases and patches. So let's start chronologically here, because since the last community meeting, we did a 1.11.1 patch release first. Bob Haddleton ran that one. So Bob, do you want to talk through the major stuff in there real quick since you ran that release?
Yeah, you expect me to remember what I did 2 weeks ago, huh?
There's a visual aid here on the screen for you.
I appreciate that. Let me make the visual aid bigger so that my eyes can actually read it. There we go. Yeah, I mean, the big things, the main reason for the release was the composition function. It's actually the bottom entry on that list. The API patching applicator, composition functions. When you enable composition functions, the alpha feature, and used it with other, existing compositions, that was causing some issues with generating additional resources that it shouldn't have been generating. And so this was a patch for that, which was the main reason for the release. And then we also pulled in performance issue fix for applying the poll interval to all of the claim and composite reconcilers for Crossplane, so that if you told Crossplane to reconcile on a 5-minute interval, it would actually do that instead of defaulting to the 1-minute interval on the claim and composites. And then there were some updates to the output of the composition and composition revision columns to make that a little bit more useful. And then a bunch of dependency object updates, obviously. So.
Yep, and fun fact, if I recall correctly, for this patch release is that Bob was the contributor for all 3 of the main fixes for the release, which kind of put him in the default seat for running the release as well. So Bob, thanks again for your contributions in the code and the fixes, as well as running the release too. So thanks a lot, man.
That was my pleasure.
All right, so that was after the last community meeting. So it was since we all met last. Now, recently today, we have a series of patch releases that are going out in response to some security advisories that were found during our fuzz testing efforts with the CNCF and Ada Logics. So Philippe has been running those. I think he was fixing the issues and running the patches as well. So Philippe, go ahead and get us updated on these. And which link is going to be the most useful for you, Philippe? Is it the release tag itself or the advisories?
Probably the advisory for the runtime one.
Runtime? Okay.
Yeah, so
there we go.
The issue was actually in the runtime package, in the field path package from the Crossplane runtime repository. We decided to, it's actually not a big issue for the library. It's just the library is just doing its job. We decided to release a CVE because it's actually, if a user of this repo, of this package, as is Crossplane, is using it without validating inputs, it could lead to an out of memory and therefore a denial of service on their services. So we decided to release an advisory for both Crossplane runtime and Crossplane itself, and then from there to propagate it to Crossplane and all things. The advisory on Crossplane has a slightly higher severity. It's medium. It's not a super critical bug and super critical issue, because it's actually to be exploited. It required the user to already have a lot of permissions, so it needed to be able to update or create compositions, and change the field path in those. So that was already a highly privileged user, so the severity is not so high. But still, we kind of took this as a chance to run through the newly deployed security policy and procedures and all things. So we kind of use this as a drill to test it out and smooth any detail in that. And so yes, we released 1.11.2 and 1.9.2, and 1.10 is on the way. We had some minor issues with the Crossplane runtime dependency in that version, which was pointing to a different release candidate, etc., etc. So had some minor hiccup, but probably will come tomorrow.
Awesome, Philippe. So thanks for updating us on that. Thanks for making those fixes and getting patch releases out for them. And then also, I don't know if the Adalogics folks are on here, but the fuzz testing effort that they went through and helped kind of build out for us and automate was really, really helpful to find issues like this and then kind of drive our security processes as well. So getting this in place, so now we have, a defined policy and the disclosure process, a vulnerability advisory process. So all that is in place now. And then, as Philippe was saying, using these vulnerabilities found in the fuzz testing as our first kind of pilot runs for the advisory security advisory disclosure process is really nice to exercise that, get things in place, figure out where the gaps are, and fill them. So I think we're feeling much, much better about it. I think Philippe has identified a couple of things that we might want to streamline to make this process a little bit better, but we've got the process in place and we're using it now and feeling good about that. So then, Philippe, you were saying that the last release that we expect here, because we've got some of the runtime releases out, I believe, and then so we have the last patch release will be a patch to 1.10 as well, right?
Yes.
There's some challenges with the Crossplane runtime dependency management there, right? So that would be the last release that we expect to call these completed.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for driving all that, Philippe. And Hassan as well. I know you've been helping a lot too, man.
Yeah, and Laura too.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. So those are the recent patch releases. So now let's turn our eyes back to 1.12, and which is the upcoming release. We are more than a month out. I'd say probably like 6 weeks out still for the scheduled release date of April 25th. There's a bunch of exciting progress going on the release board there. So we're not going to focus on every issue here, but let's get a couple of quick updates to some of the stuff that's in progress. So Hassan, I would like you to start off with the exciting update about observe-only resources and if it's possible for other folks to start testing it as well.
Yeah, sure. So basically, we put together a couple of PRs and basically we have 2 PRs in runtime and Crossplane tools, and then we have started implementing the feature in Upjet so that we can roll the feature out to the generated providers one at a time. So currently the status is the PRs are waiting for review, and in the meantime we have prepared a preview image for Upbound/provider AWS where you can install and start using the feature. So it is already shared in the observe only special interest group channel on the Crossplane Slack. It also has a procedure on how to install the provided image and how to test the feature out. So yeah, basically currently we are kind of put a small pause on the feature development and waiting for some reviews and feedbacks for the PR and the provided image.
Awesome, Hassan. I think that's great to get the preview of that functionality available to folks to try out. A group of us got together and tried that out last week, and it was super exciting to see the feature live and in action, and seeing all the status get populated with what's on the server side and all that sort of stuff. So it's really, really cool to see that. And thanks for making that available. All right, let's see. So then another couple of things of interest here. We're gonna dive into the ignore changes proposal from Lovro later on today as an agenda item, so we're gonna skip that. Philippe and Ezgi, do you want to update us real quick on the compositions validation work, I guess first, and then we'll go to Ezgi for the pluggable secret stores work.
Yeah, sure. So there is an open PR with a proposal design document for composition validation. I implemented I added a few recent changes. It's down there. I added a few recent changes after trying to implement it in a small POC to validate the approach. So it's waiting for feedback for the design document, and in the meantime, we are already kind of working on a less POC implementation, which has all the bells and whistles described in the document. But yeah, the document is there, so feel free to share any feedback.
Awesome. That's a great update as well, Philippe. Okay, and then Ezgi, is Ezgi on the call as well?
I am.
Oh, yes. Awesome.
So we have one open PR on Crossplane repository, which updates the existing pluggable secret store one-pager. What it does is actually changing the deployment model. So instead of running them as a sidecar next to Crossplane and providers, I propose to run them as a separate deployments and enable mutual TLS for authentication between Crossplane and gRPC servers. So there's that PR going on. I think I have addressed most of the issues, so it's ready to approve. CC Hasan. And the second PR is on Crossplane runtime repository. So I have basically added the proto code and added some extension point for running gRPC servers. I think it also got a couple of reviews. I have addressed most of them. There are some open issues I'd like to discuss with reviewers. But yeah, I think it's also ongoing. Hopefully we can merge it maybe this week or early next week. I don't know. And then we are going to start consuming it in Crossplane and providers. And we are going to have the real gRPC server implementation in a separate repository under Crossplane contrib.
Awesome, Ezgi. Thank you for that update on that as well. So those are some of the major work in progress that I know of. Jesse, did you want to share an update as well about signature validation work that you had been doing?
Sure. Yeah. No, I've basically restructured everything to fit behind an alpha feature flag, whereas before I was naively putting it into the a new type in V1 alpha. So I believe that I'm very close to having it ready for review again, and I'll reach out. I'm in the process of refactoring kind of how the parameters are passed. I put a message into the Slack general and kind of am figuring it out myself. But you know, I'm relatively new to Go, and not being able to overload methods with different arity in the same name and the same type has kind of like threw me for a little bit of a loop.
Awesome, Jesse. Thanks for that update, and thanks for your persistence on that as well. I would not have guessed that you were new to Go, so that's news to me.
No problem.
Sweet. Okay, that's great. That's great news. And then I also wanted to call out, I don't think it's part of the 1.12 board specifically, but and let me see if I can find it real quick on another screen. And here it is. So let's open it over here. So I do want to call out, though, the work that is going on to continue maturing composition functions, right? So that was released in alpha in the 1.11 release. It is a quite important feature, and it has gotten a lot of early adopters on it and a lot of feedback as well. So, you know, as Bob mentioned, we already did a 1.11.1 patch release to fix some functionality that was causing challenges with adopting it and using it successfully. So we are keeping a list here of all the things that we want to do to mature composition functions and improve the experience and reliability and everything around there. So if folks, as you're using composition functions, please do, chime in on this list, on this issue here with, your experience or things you want to see improved or whatever, so we can have it all in one place. So we are, tracking and continuing to, fill in all the gaps and improve and mature a composition function successfully. So let me, yes, that's 3751. Let me see if there's a good place to put this on here. Actually, I'll just do a little, okay, do a little note down here. All right, cool. So I wanted to call that out. And then Hassan, I also know that this issue here about back office not working, I know that there had been some further talking and discussion and work on it. So if there is, and I know that that's something that was highly demanded as well. Is that something you can give us a quick update on for today too, man?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, basically, we are having some progress on this PR in controller runtime. We kind of agreed that this is a viable solution, but Nick had some concerns around like there could be some implicit assumptions that making a status update actually causes a reconciliation or requeue. So basically, what I did was like I have conducted a set of experiments to make sure that it is not changing or breaking any functionality. So these are the different types of experiments that I have conducted. And also I made some kind of static code analysis in the controller runtimes managed to compiler to make sure that we don't have such an implicit assumption. So far it looks like this solution is fixing one of the problems in the original issue, basically the original problem. And hopefully we can get some progress in this PR and start consuming it from the providers. On the issue, while I was investigating the problem, actually I found another case where backoff is not working, which is the external creation is failing for some reason. The reason was that I was testing was the permission issue. So to keep things clear, I moved that part into a separate issue. And hopefully there are like a couple of solutions, and hopefully we can get to an agreement on a possible solution there. So basically the problem is split into two based on their root causes, and one of them has a fix hopefully coming soon, and the other one there are some proposal or possible solutions that we need to discuss further.
Oh, okay, great, Hassan. So the distinction you're making here is that back office not working if status is updated, and then a separate one of back office not working if external creation fails. So those are the two separate scenarios you've split the issues out into.
Yep.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Hassan, do you think that it is feasible then to, if you have a proposal for this particular scenario or case as well, do you think it's feasible to include this, at least for now, in the 1.12 milestone to keep getting some effort on it and attention on it?
Yeah, that makes sense. Basically, yeah, I need some input from I think Nick here.
Awesome. All right, so I will then put this on I'm doing this on another screen. I'm putting that in the 1.12 milestone as well, just so we continue tracking it too. Okay, so that maybe should show up. There it is, shows up there, and I may as well assign you to it as well, Hassan. No good deed goes unpunished. Okay, sweet. All right, so I expect to see your face show up there sometime soon. But all right, that is, I think, everything that's going on in 1.12 that I'm aware of right now. Oh, sorry. We have an update to get into for performance related things as well. So we will talk about that specifically too. I think though, then that captures everything going on right now within the community and the ecosystem for core Crossplane stuff. So thank you everybody for updating us with all that activity that's going on. There's obviously a lot of things happening right now. So this is very, very exciting. Is there anything that folks wanted to call out for as a priority, or a hot issue that folks are seeing that is not captured already within the release board and such? All right, good. So let's go ahead and move on past 1.12 and let's go into provider releases and updates there. So I think that's okay, good. Folks did update this with some other recent releases. I think there's a couple of releases for the community AWS provider, and then all of the upbound official providers were all updated today, I believe. So those are links to the latest releases there. Provider Kubernetes and provider Helm were also updated, I think maybe last week too. So there's links to all the release notes there where folks can catch up with everything that's going on. But we'll keep moving through the agenda though, specifically here. All right. So performance concerns in the upbound official providers, the Upjet and I'd say Upjet related providers in general. There are definitely updates to share here. I don't want to steal the spotlight from anybody specifically. So John, are you in a position to with your audio and stuff? Okay, cool. I'll let you do it.
All right, can you hear me fine?
Yeah, you sound great.
Awesome. All right, so just an update here. We've made some good progress in terms of, first of all, we had a bit of a holistic view of the problem and set out some phases. The first phase is all about, we wanted to add some more kind of like metrics in this to get some better signaling. And we made a few small tweaks, but nothing that we believe would kind of like move the needle. What the releases that went out today all have the new Prometheus metrics in them. And Jared, if you can go back to the doc so I can reference the notes. Yes, we also did a series of load testing, and you can maybe open that that issue there. And essentially, we've been trying to establish a baseline of where we were with the 0.30 releases and earlier, and then we kind of like evaluated again the approach that we previously disabled for memory leaks and duplicate resources, where we use basically a gRPC server to communicate with the Terraform provider. And the results look quite promising. We've also been able to identify the upstream issues where the memory leaks and duplication happens. And so after many hours of investigating, Alper and Sergen, who've done a lot of work in this, feel confident that they've got a good path forward to re-enable the gRPC server approach, which should give us a drastic improvement. So the current phase that we're moving into is fixing those issues that we identified with this, and then the next release of the providers will likely have it turned on by default, or at a minimum with a configuration option to turn it on. And then we'll evaluate where we are. We've got a few further optimization ideas. Once we get to a stable point where things are back to kind of like a healthy scenario, we'll also release a bit of a sizing guide to give folks just some guidance as to, if you're looking to kind of like provision so many resources, etc. This is more or less the nodes, types and sizes that you need. And then together with the kind of like focus on some of the CRD scaling issues, we might want to just have a look at how that work might then also further have a positive impact on the resource utilization to determine whether there's any further work we want to look at optimizing. But in the next few weeks, we'll be releasing an updated provider that should yield a lot of improvements.
Awesome, John. Thanks for that update there. And like definitely, outbounds are going to make great progress there. And there's been a lot of help from the community as well with testing things, recording their observations, sharing and collaborating there. So it's been some great work from a number of people on this. And I do like that one output from this is a much more enhanced series of metrics around provider performance, so that we have those going on into the future. We'll be benefiting from having those available as well for observability purposes.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention, part of the reason for introducing the metrics was also to make sure we can do some regression testing and put that in place so that we can see if there's any, if we consume a new version of the upstream Terraform providers, if it has any negative effects, etc.
Great. Yep, that's all the better to make sure that we fix this and then we'll stay in a more healthy position as well. All right. Jean, I believe that with the next section of updates from what the engineers at Upbound are working on, I might have stolen a few of those while we looked at the 1.12 board, because a lot of Upbound engineers are working on 1.12 stuff. Anything else specific you want to add, though, that we might have missed?
No, I think mostly just, on the external secret stores, we're close to wrapping up that design proposal. So if anybody has any last minute feedback, please have a look, as well as the composition validation webhook. So the only kind of like request is, if there's any last minute feedback, please get it in there so we can consider it. Other than that, the folks have already covered the updates, and Lovro will talk about the ignored changes on update later.
Perfect. All right. So then we'll keep on moving on here. I think that, yeah, so in terms of like content in the community, there's a number of cool links here to check out. Well, this one only if you speak and read German. But there's definitely some really interesting content here. I wanted to call out specifically that the AWS team, is Manabu on here actually today?
Carlos is
though, yeah. Yeah, Carlos, do you want to speak about the disaster recovery guide that your team is working on?
Yeah, it's a one additional blog post of a series. Another one is planned to go out, but this one took a long time to get everyone's review. So it took a long time to get it review. It was written. So this helps in the area, and we gather feedback from different companies, including Upbound, review this content, of at least give some guidance to customers on in terms of disaster recovery, and then what are the levels of disaster recovery. Like if you lose the cluster, or if you lose control plane, if you're doing upgrades and you're working with AWS resources that are sensitive in state, like RDS and S3 specifically, how do you recover either those managed, just basically using Valero, and what are the things to watch out for, and what are the things that maybe you need to mutate as you restore. So there's different, there's 3 scenarios in here. And related to that, I was able to get a win for the community. Was able to get a Crossplane talk into GitOpsCon, where I'll be discussing this blog post and giving a talk there.
Awesome, Carlos. Congratulations on that talk. That sounds great, man. Yeah, and this content is really good, right? This is some thorough stuff. We're talking about a number of different scenarios to be aware of. So thank you very much to the AWS folks for driving this, and thank you as well for everybody that was contributing to it with good information as well. I think most of those people are on this call. So yeah, all the authors here, like really good work.
Yeah, Jesse and others.
This is really beneficial. Yep.
Yeah, it took a while to get everyone's companies and marketing and all the stuff. You thought the technical stuff is hard, right?
Right on.
Yep. Welcome feedback, and then there's if you happen to be a AWS customer using Crossplane, there's a link in the blog post at the bottom if you want to schedule some time with my team. That we also do engagements, and we bring in different parts of the community, including Upbound and others. So just reach out.
Sweet, awesome. Yeah, definitely a good resource here. And then there's another number of.
Jump in really
Oh,
quick.
yep.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Pete.
Carlos, if you feel so inclined, I think that would be a great thing to adapt into a docs knowledge base article as well, and then link back to the original AWS post, just so we have kind of 2 points of discoverability. So if you find it through Google, you'll probably end up on AWS, and if you're crawling through Crossplane docs, you would find it there. And I can take care of it in the future if you want to take care of it. I'm happy to give you any guidance on docs contributions.
Yeah, let's follow up on an issue. Let's see what we can put in the docs. I don't want to I want to do it the right way. I don't want to pollute the docs with vendor information, right? But it's a hard balance.
Yeah, and I think I'll just say, without totally sidelining the thing, I think one reason for having the knowledge base is to allow us to do something that's a little bit more, say, vendor specific, right? We're talking about a specific solution with AWS. I think that's totally okay within that knowledge base. And if Google wants to come along later and do the same thing about GCP, great. We would love their contribution. And kind of separating, like, knowledge base is more opinionated content, and the user docs being more unopinionated, factual, kind of vendor neutral content.
I see. Cool. Yep. Yeah, let's have that, because there's a lot of people using Crossplane and a lot of questions.
Awesome. Yeah, good suggestion, Pete. Thanks for bringing that up. And thanks again to all the folks contributing to this really good content. So another set of links for other interesting content going on within the ecosystem. Victor had a cool live stream, I guess, recently going on here for the You Choose series of, like, picking what approach they want the hosts to take in doing that live. So I think that's pretty interesting. And here's a link to that to catch up with that too. There aren't really new KubeCon updates here today, but these resources are still useful for checking out all the Crossplane related talks. And then the Contrib Fest session is still going forward, and I'm pretty excited about that. I think a number of people are signed up for that. And so we will continue to need help with moderators and folks that can help with the live hands-on session there. So folks that are in Amsterdam, do reach out to me to be able to, if you're interested in supporting that session. Yep. So, and then just another note about the adopters list. Folks continue to contribute to that and add their use case and their organization to that list. It's going to be open for the foreseeable future. I don't think it'll ever get closed, actually. So yeah, do contribute to that and add your use case to there if you're interested in that. We made a note then about composition functions being matured to beta. So here's just a link to that to be able to easily get to that issue and then add your thoughts about how to continue maturing it and improving it. All right. So with that, I wanted, we have Lovro here today to kind of walk us through a proposal that he's making about how ignoring changes in specific scenarios for Crossplane. So Lovro, if you want to go ahead and share your screen to kind of talk us through the high points of the experience that you're proposing, then it is all yours, my friend.
Sure. Thank you. By the way, hi, everybody. My name is Lovro. This is my first time here, but I'm very happy to join the community. Let me know if you hear me good and you can see my screen.
All good, Lovro, all good.
Okay, I'm just watching on the side because my screen is on the side. Okay, so ignore changes. So this idea came out from an issue that Tim opened up, and he had a problem where, because Crossplane reconciliates all the parameters on the spec for provider, in some cases this is not welcome because some of the parameters under it are being also managed by some external something external, right? And for usually it's auto scaling that, for example, in this case, in auto scaling group, the desired capacity is being set by Crossplane, and it was in the for provider spec. but because it was auto-scaling, the desired capacity was being changed externally by the autoscaler, and that was causing ups and downs, because Crossplane was trying all the time fighting with the autoscaler, trying to set its value for desired capacity. And initially there was a proposition to use something like ignore changes, a new field, which has where you can put just like field paths of the things you would like to ignore during updates. So it was an interesting idea right from the start, and mostly people were also had issues with autoscalers. And yeah, and one more suggestion came up, basically actually from the observe only conversation, to use something different than ignore changes, to use something called init provider. It basically would just use the same like schema like for provider, but it would be used only for create. Yeah, so this is just the intro. So based on this, I researched a bit and made a proposal. I gathered up the examples that the people were reporting, and for now I had only 4. So I'm really hoping that we'll get some more, so we can decide which exactly direction to take. Most of them are connected with autoscaling, but there is also one that is connected with automatic upgrades for node pools, where Crossplane later fights for the version of the nodes. But we can go into that in more detail later with one of the solutions. So anyway, it seems that there is a need for a way in Crossplane to set some fields, mark some fields, or somehow that we don't want them to be updated like at all. Let's leave their updates for somebody else, and we can just check the state and copy back what the state is, but don't update it, right? Okay, so first solution, the solution that I'm proposing actually is the one with ignore changes. So in this solution, we would add in the spec an ignore changes field, which would basically be a string array with the file paths of all the things that we want to ignore. So in this case, we will ignore this desired size for the node group. And in the provider, we will still have the desired size because we want it initially, and it will be set initially in the create step of the reconciliation. But changes for it wouldn't be later on applied. So in this case, autoscaler would be able to set everything like it wants, and Crossplane won't set its desired size and force it on the external resource. And from one side, this is a bit confusing because you would still have this desired size here as one, but in the observe only design, we will get a new field in the status called add provider, so you will be able to also see like what's the real state and what's the real desired size. I know it's not ideal, but maybe somebody has a better idea also for this. Okay, one thing that comes up here is also that how can we ignore the fields that are required? Basically, there's required on updates. Like, for example, you won't be able to ignore region in AWS resources, right? Because if you don't set it for updates, the update won't work, right? So there are some fields that are only for creates, and there are some fields that are only for create and update. And for us, it's not clear which ones are which. So here we just suggest that better not to basically be careful when putting required fields in ignore changes, and do it only when you have like extensive knowledge in how the calls work underneath. Okay, and here we have some implementation details. I'll just go fast through them because I think more interesting is the other solutions. So for this implementation with ignore changes for object, basically all the changes would be in the providers. So the providers written with objects, for them we would just use the Terraform's ignore changes field and set the field paths from here into this field in the life cycle of the resource, and that should work. I didn't do a POC yet, but this is just like a theory for now. And for other providers that don't use objects, we could just provide some helper method that unsets ignored fields on the resource, and they could just call it before updating resources. So it would be like those fields are not set in the for provider. So that would a bit help with having as little changes as possible in the providers after implementing this. And we would also release it as an alpha feature with a flag in the providers, and of course ignore the field when the feature is not enabled. But still we would have to add the fields into the spec of the resources. There's also an alternative approach that Muafak suggested. Is instead of changing the API, we could just ship it as an optional annotation in the as like a first solution to see how useful is this change, and to first like survey users and see how many people are using it if it's first to setting it like in the spec. Okay. And an alternative that was considered, this is this other one I was showing you with init providers. With I'll just skip this one. This init providers, and so this would be something like it has some connotation with like init containers as well, so it maybe be more familiar to people used to Kubernetes. And basically it would be like the schema would be same as the for provider one, and you could just set for example this desired size here, and it would be only used in the create in the create step, and then in the update step the providers would normally use just for provider, and this desired size would never be like fought with. But here the problem is that first you need to set you can't just ignore fields and don't worry about the values. You have to actually set some value. And the second thing is that there's a problem with late initialization that kind of blocks this solution, because with late initialization, we could have desired size being set here again in the for provider, even though it's already in provider, and then the same thing would happen. So for now, we don't know how to solve this issue with this solution with late initialization, but we are thinking about it as well. Because there is some concern that this solution with ignored changes could be a bit too powerful and could solve too many problems that we maybe don't want. And this one be maybe a bit more like specific to this problem, that we just want to set something during creation and later we don't want to worry about it. But as I said, late initialization like kind of messes this up, and we'll have to figure out how to overcome this. And the last solution would be not to do any generic solution and just do the changes like case by case in the provider code, because it's not yet certain how many resources actually need this. For now, we have 4 examples, actually 5, because Steven recently also added that there is an issue with tags, which I guess would affect a lot of resources, but I guess that could be made solved generically in the codes of the providers. But basically, there's like a concerned that we would solve something that would not be used so much, and we would change the API maybe for not enough benefit. But yeah, but as I said, we don't have yet the data on how much this feature would be useful if you would make it generically. So yet we still don't know. If anybody has some additional like use cases for this, please feel free to give us. It will be very valuable.
Yeah, and I think that's I would exactly echo that, Lovro, is that the one of the most useful things here is going to be more sharing people's use cases for where this feature would be helpful for them, because we've got a classification or a set of use cases and there's some patterns with them, but there likely are ones out there that we haven't heard of yet. So that would be very, very useful for folks to comment on this proposal here or the issue to share those use cases.
Yeah, exactly. So I would call everybody to try and if they have some thoughts about it or some use cases, please contribute.
Awesome, Lovro. So thanks for walking us through that. And then there's opportunity right now if folks have some quick questions specific to this proposal. I think we could take one or two of those. Otherwise, though, the conversation is ongoing in the proposal PR that I think is linked in the agenda doc 3822 that folks can contribute there too.
Yeah, exactly. There's that already feedback, so feel free to join in.
Cool. All right. So then we've got one more agenda item here that was a holdover from last week. It looks like we have a quick question in the chat as well. So let's take that quick question real quick. So Rahul's asking about, can the providers be namespace scoped? And so I think that there's a number of different dimensions to look at that but overall, the general answer here is going to be probably no. That providers like managed resources, they are cluster scoped objects. You can think of it as something analogous to in a Kubernetes cluster. Like the nodes of the cluster, that infrastructure there is at the cluster scope, and it is the concern of the operators, the builders of the cluster. So that is something that's come up before, of namespace scoped providers, either their managed resources that they offer or, sharding to have different providers running and isolated in a single namespace. So you have multiple of the same providers running at the namespace level. So if let's try to find a link to that. So Rahul, you can add what you're thinking about for your use case to the discussion on those issues. All right, and Pete, did you want to talk about Docs 366? It was a holdover from last week's agenda, so I don't know if it was actually something you wanted to talk about still.
Just a quick one. We're looking at renaming the Docs main branch. That's that one, right?
And let me share my screen. Sorry about that.
We're looking at renaming the Docs main branch from master to main. Jared raised a good point that if folks have it.
Wait, this might be separate, Pete. Is this a separate issue?
Sorry. There's two of them. That's up. So this one, I'm sorry. Currently in the docs, we maintain each version as well as a master version, but master is just a copy of whatever is the latest. Historically, we've used master as the kind of development place for the next release. Through some anecdotal evidence, it seems like that actually causes more confusion as folks aren't sure where to look. So what I'm proposing is to drop the publishing of the master branch and leave master. So as we come up to 112, a new docs need to be written, we can either create a branch or put it as non-published for V112, but there would never be a master docs version that is published. And so I'm trying to keep the concept of master branch as one thing and ignore that, specifically talking about the version master that is published on the docs website and dropping that.
And so Pete, you said though that there still is an experience though for seeing documentation essentially for the next Crossplane release that is not out yet, right? Like as new features get landed into Crossplane master, and they're not actually part of release yet, but there are docs that we want to show for them so people can start using them and seeing them, et cetera, before they're released. There is an experience around that still, right, that you're proposing.
Yeah, and I will share very quickly just to give you
go ahead and stop
concrete
sharing
example.
then, to let you come in.
Let's see, which one of my 400 windows? Theoretically, it's this one. So what we would do, again, this is independent of branching. What we can do is we can come in. So each release has its own folder, and then master is a folder. What we would do effectively is create a v1.12 folder, but set it as a draft so that it wouldn't be published except on deploy previews or for local development. So everybody could build their docs, we could see it in Git, but it's not going to confuse our users as they go to docs.crossplane. And v1.11 and master are the same thing. Basically, master goes away from the website, and that's all that the user sees. So that pre-release has a development environment, but it doesn't show up on the website until we flip a flag.
Got it. And that's a conscious thing then, right? Like we have to flip, like say, okay, start showing this one now.
Yeah, we would update that release template today. Today, that release template says copy whatever is in master and rename it to v1.12. In this case, we would say, hey, v1.12 is already created. Instead of creating new content, you just got to go flip a flag. So if I actually, so the new release here, we say update the latest. I just found a bug in this. But in this template, it would say, hey, go change this parameter on the 1.12 folder to make it publish and be live.
Got it. But still pre-release though, not like the latest of, hey, this is what you should use, and it's not actually, officially released yet.
Sorry, say that again.
Just making a distinction between like a unreleased version getting published to the docs website, but it not being like the default latest that you go to docs.crossplane.io and you're not shown that as the default.
Well, I'm going as far as to say that the pre-release stuff wouldn't be published. You would have to go out of your way to see it rendered.
Okay.
So the content would live in Git, and that's fine. And so if you go and look at the Git repository, you could see those docs and you could contribute to them or whatever. If you go to the website, that pre-release version will never be seen on docs.crossplane. It would only be seen once it's released.
Oh, I see. I think I see what you're saying. Okay.
And so it's really kind of, I'm happy to talk more in the issue, but the thing we're solving for is that we kind of have two different personas. We have the user persona who's not going to look in Git and isn't looking at pre-release documentation and isn't trying to live on the bleeding edge. And we have those who are more in the know. They're the ones that are going to be looking at the repository. They're the ones that are going to be caring about and tracking that alpha feature before it drops, and not having the average user get confused by either pre-release content or something that is just, has experienced some drift since it's pre-release.
Got it. I see the distinction you're making there. Cool. So yeah, I'll take a look at that issue as well to see if kind of internalize that a little bit better and understand it.
Thanks, Jared. And if anybody else has thoughts or feelings, DM me, drop something in the issue, Telegram, whatever works for you.
Cool. And then there's, I guess to round it out for the day here, there's a question in the chat as well around when I kube control apply and delete CRDs. CRDs are hung as they have finalizers even after deleting objects associated. Any comments here? Good question. That's not expected behavior, but when like the understanding or the expectation is that the CRDs that are exposed by a provider are managed by the package that they're contained in and the package manager. So it's expected to, like if you delete all live instances of resources, of managed resources, so there's none of those left. And then you delete the provider object or the configuration object, whatever it is, so that the Crossplane's package manager then goes and starts cleaning up all the CRDs that are defined in that package, that it should take care of them, remove the finalizers, clean everything up. So I don't know if there's a path that's being taken here outside of that, but like that's the package manager is the one who is expected to do all that cleaning up, and there should not be, that's not expected to be a manual action where like you're actually doing deletes on CRDs yourself. So maybe that does help, but if not, we can kind of go into more details maybe in Slack or something.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. All right, everybody. So that's the end of the agenda. Thanks all for the participation in the chat. Thanks everybody for talking through all the cool stuff we're working on. So obviously a whole lot going on in the project right now and a lot of exciting progress. So great to see everybody today. Thanks everybody for joining in, and we'll see you all again soon.